State Rep Joe Sosnowski taking time out of his day, but it appears, he may have a whole bunch of time to give us the way things are looking right now. Joe, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Get in there, you punch the time clock, and then what happens?
Well, these Speaker Madigan's becoming famous for his committee of the whole hearings, where he decides who gets to talk for hours on end, and unfortunately, nothing was resolved. It was a lot of circus show, and that was about the extent of it.
And to be clear, Joe, you guys are down there not because the governor has called you into a special session. You're down there because Mike Madigan, the House Speaker, has requested your presence, which means, among other things, no mileage, no per diem.
Yeah, which is good. But as far as the mileage and per diem, we shouldn't be paying any of the representatives or senators any compensation for coming down in overtime session. But Speaker Madigan essentially has been calling these special sessions regularly now, 2 days this week. And really what he's doing is just trying to deflect criticism. He runs a couple sham hearings and different bills and pretends him and his members are working towards compromise when, in fact, they really refuse to do anything that the governor has proposed, but they're trying to place blame on the governor for not wanting to negotiate. It's really kind of an interesting spectacle to watch in person, but it's really unfortunate for the state of Illinois because there are definitely opportunities for compromise where the governor has extended multiple olive branches, but basically Speaker has refused to accept any of those.
That and the fact that the guy in charge shoves a budget $4 billion in the red on the governor's desk, and for the governor to bristle a bit at that, reject that, and point out that's not what we need to do. Somehow the governor is extreme.
Yep. I saw a great cartoon a couple of weeks back. Might have been in one of the Chicago dailies. And Madigan is inside a burning house. The house is on fire, and that represents Illinois' troubles. And Governor Rauner is rushing to the scene with a fire hose to put out the fire, and Madigan's up in the second-story window yelling at him, "You stay away, Mr. Extreme." Unfortunately, it's almost as if he's disconnected with the reality of Illinois and just doesn't care. Politically, I think he's just looking to protect himself and his members, without having to make any really tough decisions. And fortunately for us, I think we've got a governor who is willing to, take on the big issues, and he's saying we can't just keep doing business as normal. We have to make some changes, and it's a tough position to hold, but he's doing a good job of it, and hopefully, as this kind of plays out, maybe over the next couple of months, we'll move Speaker and the Democratic leadership off their position.
State Rep Joe Sosnowski with us. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. I've been noticing in some of the, protests over the lack of a budget, a lot of signs saying Bruce Rauner's cuts will harm healthcare workers. Bruce Rauner's cuts will harm women. Joe, there's not really any cuts, are there? We're talking about a budget passed by Democrats where there's no money to fund it. So it's a fake, phony promise being made, and now they're protesting the fact that the unfunded, fake, phony promise is being cut back by Bruce Rauner. There are no Rauner cuts, technically.
And that's a very good point to make. I mean, essentially where we've been at for the last month or so is the Democrats passed a budget, $4 billion or more out of WROK, and unfunded, unconstitutional, but then they blame the governor for not coming up with a better budget. Well, when he vetoed it, he had to, in my opinion, because it was unconstitutional. He did approve the one part for school funding so that our schools can open in the fall. But outside of that, he's offered several different opportunities where we can save some money going forward. But it's also requested that the Democratic Party come on board and work towards job reforms and things that will grow our economy. And one thing I sent out to a letter to my colleagues yesterday, just highlighted the kind of the difficulty we're in. If you go back to 2008, we had something like 6.3 million people working in Illinois, and today that number is 200,000 less. And that's 7 years later, we haven't recovered from the Great Recession, and we're still struggling. And those are the numbers we need to focus on, and that's why we're not going to have good budgets, because we're not growing as a state. We need to have the labor force growing. We need to have our population growing, whereas right now it's flat, and we're not doing the structural changes that are necessary to make that happen like other states have done.
Joe, do you think at any point you're going to see any rebellion amongst the rank and file? You're going to get anybody who would dare buck the path that the Speaker has chosen here?
Well, I think eventually. Unfortunately, right now, if you talk to some of my fellow Democratic colleagues, when they took a vote to increase taxes years ago, none of them lost their election. So they feel as though they're insulated. The Speaker will protect them politically. So many of them, I believe, are walking around right now saying, well, we're just going to fight this to the end. We're not going to give in on anything. And unfortunately, you can't negotiate with that type of, to use the Speaker's terms, an extreme position. You've got to have somebody or a group that's willing to meet in the middle and negotiate towards a better deal. And, right now, there's no pressure on them to do so. I think now that, we're getting into a budget shutdown period as the weeks and maybe months go on, I think some of them will start to come to the table. There's very good moderate members who, really, unfortunately, just kind of go along with the Speaker on many cases, but, they definitely don't have to. There's an opportunity for them to come to the table and work with us.
State Rep Joe Sosnowski with us. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. What about, Joe, this idea? Mike Madigan apparently going to push through a temporary 1-month spending plan, but $2.2 billion in spending. Going to try to, at least. Is that a sound strategy? And do you think all 71 Democrats in the House will be on board Mike Madigan's temporary 1-month plan?
It's hard to say. Obviously what the governor vetoed, I believe, totaled up to about $21 billion in spending. So if they propose over $2 billion per month in spending, obviously that's going to be, again, back to being completely out of whack. So, even on the 1-month basis, he's not even proposing something that looks to trim back. So I think it's going to be difficult for them to pass. In my conversations with the governor, and I don't think this will change, is that he's very, very unlikely to sign that because really it just takes the pressure off the Democratic majority, and they'll just wait another month and hopefully, or they'll hope that the governor will give in to their demands and just go along and not do anything. But again, I think he's said from the get-go that we need these structural changes, and this has to be part of any budget deal.
And speaking of another Madigan entering the fray, you got Rauner versus Madigan, the Attorney General in this particular case, because now the argument is about state employee paychecks. They're going to keep going, according to Rauner. You got Lisa Madigan going, no, we lack the ability to pay for it. We can't do it. Where's this going to wind up? Yeah,
very, very interesting turnabout, I guess, in some cases. You would think that Madigan, Speaker and Lisa, would be fighting to keep the workers' paychecks going, and for some reason they're saying no, they don't want to pay any of the state workers. And it's important to note, during the shutdown, it's not as if all the agencies and businesses are going to stop completely in the state. Everybody's still expected to show up to work today and for the future. And the operations are supposed to go on. That without having a budget, there's spending capacity that can't be done. But this governor has said, listen, if we're going to have people coming to work, they deserve a paycheck. Just because the legislature won't come to the table and put together a budget that makes sense, we can keep most of the state operations going. We're going to have to cut back on those special fund areas and special projects and some of our human services funding. There's a lot of areas that will have to be cut back, but in the area of state workers and services, we can keep those going. He's got a plan for doing that, but the Attorney General right now appears to be fighting him on that and does not want that to happen.
State Rep Joe Sosnowski with us here. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. I know you got to run here in a minute. Let's close with this. You're going to hear a lot beginning today, July 1st, about Illinois government shutting down. And you touched a little bit on this, but it's kind of a slow rollout. And for a large portion of the population, they might not notice anything is different for weeks, perhaps months, especially now that the schools have been funded. What's the impact on a normal, everyday Illinois resident going to be that there's no budget today?
Yeah, and that's why I say, with the Democratic majority probably not willing to move for weeks, if not months, is that if there is a stoppage in paychecks, that won't happen until the 15th of the month. So as far as state employees and job-related activities, none of those pressures will come until then. Some of the agencies, outside agencies, or third-party vendors of the state, we're used to being 6, 9 months,
right,
12 months behind anyways. Some of those will still be receiving 2014 fiscal year payments just because they're delayed, so they really won't get interrupted, maybe for a month or two down the road here. And so a lot of things, I think, frankly, a lot of folks in Illinois will, wake up tomorrow, the next day, and the next week, and haven't noticed a tremendous amount of difference. But after the couple months, then things will really start to be more difficult, and we'll start to see maybe agency offices shut down, programs not being offered, large numbers of programs not being offered, and third-party vendors for the state just ceasing to do business for the state.
Hey, State Rep Joe Sosnowski. Joe, as always, we appreciate you taking time for us.
Hey, thanks very much for having me, guys. You have a great day.